So here again is the Airodump-ng. So once we've actually put our network card in promiscuous mode, right, in monitor mode, we then use Airodump, which is used for packet capturing of raw 802.11 frames and is particularly suitable for collecting WEP IVs, initialization vectors here, right, for the intent of using them with Aircrack-ng. If you have a GPS receiver connected to the computer, Airodump-ng is also capable of logging the coordinates as found on the access points. Now additionally, Airodump-ng writes also a text file containing the details of all access points and clients seen. We also have Aireplay, as we mentioned. Again, this is another tool that would be used after we initiate the capture. Aireplay is a Linux-based tool which will capture an encrypted packet and replay it on the network. If the intercepted packet is in the right sort, it will also generate an encrypted response, which is suitable for TCP SYN packets, echo requests, ARP requests, or any packet that causes a client to respond. The best so far is going to be the ARP discovery packets. It is at the lower layer, which means it's more sneaky and less chance of denial service. We have the Deauth and disassociation attack. Now these are considered to be denial service attacks type scenarios, because what we're doing is we're taking that user, that legitimate user, off the network, and then we're causing them to reassociate, right? So we can grab that data. So the Disassociate attack will repeatedly transmit disassociate packets spoofed with the target's access point's MAC address. The Deauth attack is essentially the same, but it will also deauthenticate the packet, which also is more effective than a Disassociate. Either will cause the client to temporarily remove itself from the network, so transmitting one Deauth packet will cause the client to transmit the hidden SSID, and voila, there it is. So once you stop the attack, the client will attempt to reassociate again, and of course all that's in clear text. We grab it, and then we do with it. What we do with it? Well, we pop it into Aircrack-ng, which is going to be the tool that uses unique IV packets as a source. Here, about 95% of encrypted packets use those unique IVs, and the capturing of the packets about 150,000 for a 64-bit key and 500,000 for a 128-bit key. And it also supports dictionary attacks on WPA PSK encrypted networks, which is pretty cool. And here we can see Aircrack-ng that has cracked a 128-bit key with roughly 150,000 unique IVs. Very cool. Now when it comes to attacking WEP, we're going to need to record some of the items from Kismet or Airodump-ng. We need the ESSID, also known as the network name in the Linux world. The BSSID, which we already know is the access point MAC address. The channel number, and the client's MAC address. So we start the packet capturing with Airodump-ng. We then start injecting packets separately using Aireplay-ng. We perform a deauthentication/disassociation attack, and once the 150,000 packets are captured, start cracking 40 WEP key, or a 104-bit WEP key, which requires roughly 500,000 packets. Also, we crack the WEP key then with Aircrack-ng. Crack WPA, we need to record the same information, the SSID, BSSID, the channel, and the client's MAC address. We also go in and start the packet capturing with Airodump-ng. Then we also perform a deauthentication/disassociation attack. And once we have captured the complete four-way handshake, as in WPA handshake, we can then perform a dictionary attack using Aircrack-ng, or we can use a tool called Cowpatty, which we can use as well. And when it comes to your typical wireless network, basically here's what it looks like. We have our WAN, also known as, in this case, as the Internet. We have the DMZ, your demilitarized zone. Here generally it's going to be protected by two firewalls, one from the Internet and one protecting the internal. And then we have the local area network, which we're then connected to via hosts and so forth. And we'll break this down here in just a moment again. Then we have what's called the 802.1x EAP types. This is going to be the extensible authentication protocols. This basically relays port access requests between the WLAN clients, which are known as the supplicants, the wireless access points, known as the authenticators, and the radius AIS servers, known as the authentication servers. This will also prevent the attacker from accessing the wired network without authentic logon, even if they have broken the encryption key. So let's take a peek at some of this TLS deployment. So first thing up, the wireless client associates with the access point with either WEP or WPA. It goes over to the client, which passes the computer user certificates to the radius server. The radius server then, of course, then goes through, passes it to the domain controller. The domain controller verifies the certificate, as valid and then informs the certificate authority. And of course the CA then issues the certificate, which allows the wireless client to then access the internal local area network. And as you see here, it goes right around the firewall. And there it goes. Once that's all happens, the client is able then to communicate through the DMZ firewall because of the certificate that went through and so forth. All right, and that's pretty much the gist of it when it comes down to the wireless side of things and so forth. Now, there are some other things I want to mention here at least, and it comes into place regarding some other types of attacks that we can do that I don't have any slides on here. But one is rogue access points. So when it comes down to rogue access points, what we're basically doing is we're taking another access point, putting it on the network. Now, this would be the attacker's access point, and we're just attaching it to the existing network. That would be considered a rogue access point. Now, what we also have is, so basically what we want to do there is we have a client that's connecting to it, and then we're capturing all the data that goes to that access point. Pretty straightforward, and since we have full control over that access point, we're able to capture everything that goes on. Now, another attack that we can use is called the evil twin attack. Now, the evil twin is basically when you go to a Starbucks or something, and then you go in and you set up a new access point, your own, and you name it the same as the existing access point that's there. Again, the idea here is that users will connect to wherever the strongest signal is, they will connect to that access point. And again, if you have control over it, you then have access to actually bring in, capture anything that goes on through there, even if it's in encrypted format and such as well. So pretty cool stuff when it comes down to it. And again, there's not too many wireless type of questions you may get into, but from what we've covered so far, you should be good to go on answering any type of wireless question that may come into play there. Okay, now let's go ahead and refocus a little bit, and this time we're going to be talking about two more topics. One will be viruses and the other cryptography. So let's take a peek at some of your malware, Trojan horses, and backdoors. These are going to be your viruses and worms and so forth, which all is part of that as well. Now, there's going to be a few different things in here that you're going to need to know regarding, your antiviruses and what type and so forth. But it should be all pretty straightforward as well when it comes down to it. And just knowing certain things will definitely assist in that whole process. So if you have ability to look some things up, please do so, and so forth. So let's take a peek here into some of those items. All right. So when we're looking at distributing malware, overall, malicious software here, classic malware uses viral distribution patterns in which one infected station infects another, and then an epidemic evolves from that, right? So normally through email attachments, instant messaging, IRC, very important IRC side of it, right? So we have physical access, such as story media and DVDs, CDs, and USB sticks and so forth, right? And of course through the traditional browser and email software bugs and so forth that we have this as well. Now we also have file sharing through either NetBIOS file sharing, peer-to-peer if you happen to be using that, and any kind of Usenet news groups as well. Of course, another big one is untrusted sites and freeware software, which goes down to never downloading anything off of an untrusted site. And of course, wrapped or rewrapped programs. And basically, when we talk about Trojan terminology and so forth, it is required to create an executable file, like a legitimate file and an illegitimate file like Netcat. And we combine those in what we call a wrapper, all right, is where we get in and we basically create a semi-legal executable that the client or our target will then execute and so forth. There's certain tools we can use for that, one in particular called Elite Wrap, that will allow us to actually see that and do that. Obviously, some of the malware capabilities that we have is that we allows us to have what's called remote access. And sometimes they're called remote access Trojans, are also called as RAT. We also have password sending that we can do, keyloggers, obviously, surveillance as a spyware, a denial of service attacks as in your DOS attacks, and when it comes into use of botnets, right, using bots and zombies, of course, distributed denial of service attacks. And we also have file transfer protocol Trojans as well, and software detection killers, which will actually take out your antivirus and also disable your firewalls and so forth. Pretty sweet thing, right? Okay, now keep in mind, when it comes to the malware and the antivirus products and so forth, whenever we're actually using an antivirus program, it will generally go out there and scan the boot sector for virus activity and so forth, right? And we basically have the ability to hopefully find some of those things, because some of the items that happen when it comes to some of these viruses and so forth, also when it comes to some of what we call the rootkits and so on, is that they will generally attach themselves to the master boot record on the hard drive, and then possibly then change the boot sequence options and so forth along with that. And one way you can basically determine, let's say we have a boot sector virus out there, is what it does, it actually goes out there, moves the master boot record from one location of the hard disk, and then copies itself to the original location of the master boot record. So it basically takes it, puts it into another location, and then copies itself there, and so forth. And again, these tend to be the types of viruses that we generally will get infected with, at least back in the day, the boot sector viruses and so on. But there are, of course, other ones out there which we'll talk about here shortly as well. But again, a lot of these, of course, have similar capabilities, and these are just a few of the many that happens here. And again, this is mainly talk about malware, but with your viruses and your rootkits and Trojans, those are all kind of in the same category, as they say. Right, and when it comes down to mail bombing, this is overwhelming someone with junk mail. So signing up someone for every mail order, catalog, subscription, credit card solicitation, and other commercial offers on the internet in order to overwhelm their computer system. In 1995, this happened with a contributing writer of the Wired magazine. Email links. Never follow. Let me repeat that. Never follow. Let me repeat that one again. Never follow links included in emails for your convenience. It is possible to make every official-looking email that would make you believe that they came from a legitimate source. You can check out the Microsoft.com/@home/security/email/phishing MSPX for a little bit more detail on that. But keep in mind here, you probably have seen these before, right? The emails that come in from FedEx, from DHL, and whatnot. And they look official. They have the official logos and everything on it. And even the email address seems official. But keep in mind, you never want to click on the link. If you go to UPS or whatever, right, type it in and see what you can get versus clicking on the link, because it may, again, take you to a web page that still looks official but may actually be going to a malicious site and so forth. So be very cautious of that. This still is very, very effective, especially for those busy receptionists and so forth that are getting FedEx all the time, and they get a FedEx email that states, hey, we missed your package, and here's a, you can print the receipt out and come get it kind of thing. And when they do, they actually infect themselves with some type of Trojan. Now we have phishing with the PH. This is a criminally fraudulent process of attempting to acquire sensitive information such as usernames, passwords, as well as credit card details by masquerading as a trustworthy entity in the electronic communication field. Pretty sweet. And again, this is another one where we can get an email, and then we click on the link, and it then asks us to maybe put in some additional information. So, such as, let's say we get an email that states, hey, your PayPal account has been compromised. You need to log in and verify your, credentials or whatever. So you go to the site, you click on the link basically, go to the site, and then from there, you log in with your valid credentials. It only then redirects you to the actual site, and you log in again, and everything seems fine. Well, the first time you tried to use your credentials, you actually then sent the information to the hacker. And then they have now valid credentials for your Facebook or for your PayPal or whatever account that it is that you got the email from and so forth, right? So it's, again, lots of different ways of doing that. One thing I found is that as the attacker, because I've actually done some phishing attacks for pen testing purposes, and one thing we had to come up with basically is how creative can we be to allow a user to actually click on the link. And you have to be very creative, because if people don't just necessarily randomly click on the link, what if it has something to do with them personally? What if it's something, again, that has to do with their job or whatever? I've heard of folks that basically came back and if they're in court and stuff, they'll all of a sudden get all of these emails that have to do with court-related cases and so forth, where it'll say, hey, you've missed the case number, blah, 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 and you appear to court. And, I've actually seen those types of emails out there, and such that students will bring in and kind of say, hey, do you know what this is all about? But reality is that these are just phishing attacks, right? I've had other students come in, they basically said, if your wife knew about this, or if your husband knew about this, and, or things like, I can't believe they posted this picture of you on the internet, or whatever the case. Again, they're trying to be creative on getting you to click on the link. What can we do to have you click on the link? So anyway, they get very, very creative on that, and just know that it could be very simple. Again, very legitimate looking and so forth when it comes down to it. But just keep in mind that some of those are just, again, with the FedEx service and so forth. Now, another thing you can do, though, too, when it comes to some of those, is you can verify the digital signature attached with the mail, if it has one, right? Well, digital signature. And then the fake email will generally not have a digital ID at all. So if you come check, and this would basically be in the message header information on the email headers and so forth. And we have a thing called spear phishing. This is a targeted version of the phishing, such as emails that appear to be from an internal revenue service have been used to steal sensitive data from the U.S. taxpayers. Recent phishing attacks have also been directed specifically at senior executives and other high-profile targets within the business. And again, it's known as spear phishing. Replay attacks. And this is a form of network attack in which a valid data transmission is maliciously or fraudulently repeated or delayed. So they're carried out either by the originator or by the adversary who interprets the data and retransmit it. Possibly as part of a masquerade attack by IP packet substitution and so forth. And again, definitely could be a way of going about trying to get your data. Now, there are other tools out there that we can use when it comes to some of this stuff. And there's one here that's used for a backdoor. It's called Netcat. You will need to know Netcat, so make sure that you have a good understanding of at least what I'm going to show you here in the next few slides, and make sure you get it down pat. You should be able to identify what Netcat looks like if it's used properly. Now here we're seeing Netcat used as a banner grabber. So doing banner grabbing in a sense. It does do other things, scanning and such as well, but it also acts as a backdoor. So it creates inbound, outbound connections via TCP, UDP, and from any port that you choose. The ability to use any local source port as well, and the ability to use any locally configured network source address. Again, pretty sweet thing there. It's built-in port scan capabilities with a randomizer, and also has built-in loose source routing capabilities as well. Here's some of the Netcat switches that you can have, and V is for verbose, your VV for very verbose, E for execute, D for stealth mode, N, when specified, will only accept numeric IP addresses and not DNS lookups, L for listen, and then uppercase L, which basically allows you to stay connected even after you've disconnected to that session. P is for port, T is for telnet negotiation, U for UDP, and O for log files. Now, how this would be used in the real world would be just like this. In the Windows side, we would use Netcat with a -L. And obviously, we would want to do the uppercase L, meaning that once we connect in, we can basically reconnect after we've disconnected. Then we do a -P for the port number, and we give it a port number. And then we give it the -E. In this case, we're going to execute the command shell. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what that looks like, and you get a better idea of what that is. But what you need to do is you need to know what the syntax is, and this is what it looks like. So it should be very similar to what we see here. Now, sometimes you'll see it may have a -T in there, saying that it's basically looking for a telnet session, but it doesn't have to be in there for that to work. Right, so if you're doing it from Linux and Unix, you use basically the same thing, except you're going to your bin sh, and when you connect to the listener, you can use Netcat or Telnet to then put in the IP address with the port number behind it to then connect to that particular port.